here again with Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm CEO of Stimulus Technologies, and we're here at Robin Robbins TMT IT and Sales Conference. And we're excited to hear talking to Huntress, Ethan from Huntress, and about cybersecurity, EDR, all things that are essential to businesses. So tell us a little bit about Huntress and what you do to protect our clients.
Yeah, so we are a managed 24/7 cybersecurity platform. So we have our SOC team in the UK, Ireland, the United States, and Australia. Follow the sun staffing model so that people aren't chugging Red Bull, because people trying to stay up in the middle of the night, is not going to be successful watching for threats. And we own our own EDR technology. The background of the company, we had 3 founders who came out of the NSA and were very good at getting onto machines and staying there. And they were like, there's a business in protecting against us. And that's the root of us, of being very driven to find threat actors in environments and protecting businesses, because we felt that security can't be just for the large enterprise. It needs to give enterprise class security tools for everybody at a price point they can afford. That's like a driving mission of what we're about.
Cool. So, I think you brought up an interesting point. So a lot of companies, especially SMBs, think that their IT guy is handling all their cybersecurity, but most threats happen at 2 a.m. or they're in the system for a long time,
yes.
And then they are on a Saturday night at 2 a.m. And so having a 24-hour security operations center or SOC is essential.
Exactly, and because they can do things like we can remediate we can kill that process, we can remove malware that can install, but we can also do, we call it isolation, where our team, if they see a threat actor land on a machine, start touching it, will isolate that machine container so that the threat actor can't get there. Or if they think that threat actor is going sideways in the middle of the night, they'll isolate the entire organization. And that way that business is protected until you can get clear eyes, understand what's going on, and now you can systematically deal with that attack. And our analysts, love being able to catch those threat actors in the early stages. And it's all about that early detection you talked about. You want to be there as early as possible as the threat actors are trying to understand, because something people don't always understand is a threat actor doesn't immediately jump into an environment and ransomware it, or they're trying to understand what the business is they've landed in, because they are actually in a business. They're in a business of getting data. And so they want to understand what they have gotten. They're going to take some discovery. They're probably going to resell that to somebody else for the access. Hey, I got in here. So it's a very interesting ecosystem.
And as they discover that data, they're putting a price tag on what it means to the business.
Exactly.
Because, a business that doesn't have a lot of data, they might ask for a couple of $1,000s. But somebody that has a lot of confidential data, they might ask for millions of dollars.
Exactly. And then one of the things, though, is that I know, I was on the MSP side before I came to Huntress, was that small businesses are like, well, we don't have anything of value, but there's always something of value, whether that's payroll information for your own employees, it's your invoices and who your customers are. Maybe, you don't think of yourself as this major business, but one of your businesses that you take care of has a downstream person. And so it's all about those connections that they're looking at monetizing.
And I think one of the biggest threat vectors right now is email and cloud data.
Yes.
So talk to us about identity management and protection.
Yeah, identity is definitely where the threat actors are pivoting to, because we've done really good coming up with EDR, next generation antivirus, putting in firewalls that are blocking access. And so they've realized, as we've moved more and more to working off of our phones, that identity is driving everything. So largest, FBI just came out with latest numbers I haven't seen this year came out for 2024, but last year, business email compromise, largest number that was out there in their data. And that's going to continue to climb. And have heard, horrendous cases where that identity becomes so critical, because we do have things like single sign-on, that you can log in with your email address into a HR system. And so if a threat actor compromises you and you're in charge of HR, now they can go over into your HR system and have access to all that data. So identity is definitely the big thing that is out there, and yes, MFA is going to help you. You definitely need to have MFA on devices, but they're now coming up with ways to bypass and attack those MFA codes and grab that. So it's a continual cat and mouse kind of game, for lack of a better description.
And what we see on those with the identity attacks is often just like in computers, they're in there for a long time. They set up redirect rules. So if they're communicating with a vendor or, let's say that accounting person, redirecting payments, things like that.
Redirecting payments, understanding how the email tones work, what access they had, setting it up, and they'll do kind of that long con, for lack of a better description, where they might even compromise a couple of accounts and start an email chain, quote unquote, legitimate email chain that they're hiding with those rules, etc., to create that veneer of it all being authentic with multiple accounts. And it's crazy.
And we use automated software to detect that because these rules are really complex, and it's just hard for one IT guy or even an IT team to detect all this that's going on. You have to have these automated tools that's detecting what's going on.
You have to think how, one of the things I love about being at Huntress is we have dedicated threat researchers for every one of our products. And so for identity, for instance, our threat researcher has started to realize that OAuth apps, which are these applications you can install in a Microsoft tenant, are actually being used to exfiltrate data. And so now he's started to see this thing. We've now been able to add that into our product where we can see what we call rogue apps. And so things that person might click on, install because they've been tricked in a phishing email or something like that. Now we're able to detect that and say, hey, it looks like an end user has installed this thing that you would have taken actions to change passwords, put MFA back in place, etc., but those apps would have kept that persistence.
Yeah, we've actually talked about this on another podcast episode. So what he was talking about is, sometimes you get those emails that say, log in to download your secure email message.
Yes, exactly.
And you click on that, it says, connect with your Office 365 account. You click on that, it sounds great. And it looks like, an email that you were expecting, but it's now they're getting access into your 365 environment through the OAuth authentication. So hackers are very tricky, and we have to stay up on it as much as possible. So we appreciate working with vendors like Huntress that keep us up to date. So thanks so much.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Nick,
thanks.
Great talking to you.